What's up, everybody? It's Dakota, and today on Valentine's Day we got a what I would consider maybe an emergency banning. I didn't hear anything about there being a banned and restricted announcement coming out from Wizards of the Coast, but today on Valentine's Day we got a banning in Standard for Magic Arena, which is going to be the first time that we've had a client-based banning than we have just in general standard banning. So to maybe the surprise of a few people, I'm not really surprised but kind of ashamed. Nexus of Fate is now banned in Best of 1 and ranked Best of 1 on Arena, but it is not banned in Best of 3 and any specialty formats on Arena. So kind of where this is coming from, what it means, it actually explains their decision. They're making their process of deciding whether it should be or shouldn't be banned. And just to kind of give my thoughts on it, it's probably a good thing for Best of 1, because when you play a format like Best of 1, you either play probably the most linear deck trying to get the most busted draw and Goldfish wins, or you end up playing a deck that plays a ton of cards that wouldn't necessarily see play in the main decks of most decks when playing traditional Magic Best of 3 or like any other like tournament that you would go to. Like playing mono red so much online, you'd play a lot of cards that just gain you life because those cards would generally just be good against mono red decks and things of that nature. So seeing Nexus of Fate banned in Best of 1, in the sense that it probably made it so games were a lot more miserable, and that's the kind of thing to remember when playing Magic or when they make decisions about formats, is that it's meant to make enjoying the format more enjoyable. You can't have people not having fun and then people playing these unfun cards for the sake of that. Maybe it makes it fun for them, but if it makes the majority upset, and there's a lot of people very upset that they would just play against Nexus of Fate decks that didn't play any win conditions or didn't have any win conditions, and their whole thing was just to play Nexus of Fate, shuffle back in their deck, rinse and repeat. And in the real world, in paper Magic, that would never happen, because as soon as your opponent just only did that, then the judge would be called, or someone would be called there, and then they would be expected to move the board state in some way, or they would make them pick an arbitrarily large amount of times that they would do it, and then they would have to do something else or pass the turn, something of that nature, to basically just end this infinite loop that cannot be ended on Magic Arena because they don't time out. You can't time out a player that just has essentially unlimited time and unlimited amounts of timeouts, because they're just doing whatever the game lets them do. It says they get to take an extra turn, so then they get to take that extra turn and not worry about their timer running out, because their timer just resets as soon as they finish an action, which is just drawing a card, putting the card in the stack, the auto tapper taps the mana, resolves, and then gets shuffled back in the deck. So Nexus of Fate being banned in Best of 1, I'm alright with it for the fact that it's not banned in paper. I think as far as the paper meta and the Best of 3 and all that stuff, Nexus of Fate's fine. Is it a broken card at face value? Yes, it is. It is a very good card, very abusable. So abusable that one specific format in Arena had to ban this card. Of course, it's powerful. It didn't get banned for no reason. But in the context of everything else that people are doing in Best of 3 and in paper Magic, this card's fine. This card will be fine, and it shouldn't see any further bannings, in my opinion, for the rest of the time it's going to be in Standard. Now, we also have another ban and restricted announcement in March. That's probably where I missed it. I might have said something in another ban and restricted announcement, but we also get one March 11th. And hopefully nothing changes in that, unless there's Modern. Of course, I would love them to unban like Splitter Twin or Stoneforge Mystic. Something like that, just to shake up the format, other than just a banning, letting us have more cards to play with in the format. But other than that, hopefully no changes to anything else. So now, Wizards doesn't just ban cards and not really give a reason for it. Doesn't mean the reasons are always the best reasons, but they do give you reasons on why a card was banned or why a card was unbanned, and try to give you some insight of what the thinking is. So Nexus of Fate, to ban or not to ban is quite the debate. They went over, is the card too powerful, and is it disrupting normal play? And before even reading any of this stuff, is the card too powerful? Well, the card does something very powerful in the game. Does it at a time where it's easiest to abuse, especially now with cards like Wilderness Reclamation. I even did a video on that card before, probably even like 2 weeks ago, sometime when the set was coming out, and immediately the first thing I thought of when I saw this card is that Nexus of Fate is going to love this. You know, who cares about Expansion Explosion? You might actually get to kill your opponent, but like this way you can basically just stall out the game till you get to that point, and then you just get to dig and search and do whatever you want. That Nexus of Fate is just going to be a card that loves this, that loves Wilderness Reclamation. So the card already doing something very powerful at face value, and then all the other things you compare it with make the card super, super powerful. It just helps that it costs so much, and the amount of setup and the amount of removal for even that setup that is in the format, that it doesn't just run rampant in just like the mono red decks and red black decks that we were playing with a few standard seasons ago, that were 30-40% of the meta, and you were either playing that deck or you were playing a deck that was like trying to beat that deck, but never really quite had the tools to beat it consistently. You know, this deck is very beatable in the fact that people don't even think it's one of the best decks in Standard, that Esper Control and Sultai mid-range and these climb decks and all this other stuff that's going on. It's a weird conversation, and it can be a whole video on its own, but Nexus of Fate, as a card being too powerful, they should have known that obviously that card was very powerful in what it did just on its own. And is the card disrupting normal play? Gee, you know, normal gameplay isn't I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn. We do that a few times, and then I proceed to take the next 20 turns while you lose the game. That's just not how. That's not how it works. We've had games that disrupt normal play patterns, where they go on to even talk about, you know, the recent banning of Croc-Clan Ironworks and Aetherworks Marvel in Standard so long ago, where people were just playing Aetherworks Marvel decks, and they were playing them and able to use them on turn 4 to cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger to exile an opponent off of 2 lands, and even if you countered it. Alright, let's say you even countered the Ulamog. Whatever, your opponent still had 4 lands in play, their engine, and you had 1 land, maybe a second land to play on your turn 4, and you were still playing 2 drops. And that's assuming you didn't do anything, and you probably weren't doing anything, being as you were the control deck, and you're way behind against these other decks. So it kind of pigeonholes you into playing those cards because, you know, like Croc-Clan Ironworks, I don't know why it's not coming up. That's stupid. Just being a way to just end the game right on the spot. And Aetherworks Marvel essentially ending the game right on the spot. And Nexus of Fate doesn't do that on its own. And obviously, Aetherworks Marvel and Croc-Clan Ironworks have other cards that go with it that make it end the game and speed up the clock and just basically make it so your opponent doesn't have any more real critical decisions. And even when they make what seems to be the right decision, doesn't matter, because then they could still just lose the game anyway. Nexus of Fate somehow, to me, in my opinion, is less egregious on these levels, because the card itself won't end the game. Just 7 mana, take an extra turn, and you don't have a way to abuse that extra turn. It just doesn't matter. It's like, people call it an Explorer. Literally, there's a card named Explorer that does essentially what some people at the floor of Nexus of Fate wanted to do, is to just dig a card deeper in their deck, and then get to play another land and get ahead on mana. There's even a card that we have, Growth Spiral, essentially does the same thing that the floor of this card, or at least where you want the floor on this card to be. So, does the card disrupt normal play? Yes, I think taking extra turns, even coming from the person that plays Banned Nexus of Fate, having a card just in standard that you can take an extra turn with and abuse. There's a reason why they print extra turn spells in Magic, and they have the clause of they get exiled, because you have to jump through way more hoops to get those cards back from exile, to even put them in your graveyard and to attempt to get them back, than cards like Nexus of Fate that doesn't even go to the graveyard, doesn't even have an instance where it goes to the graveyard, just if it would go there from anywhere. Not even if you cast it, shuffle back into your deck. Like, that doesn't... As someone who plays the game for fun, even though I'm a competitive player, I play the game for fun, I try to have fun, but trying to understand why a card like Nexus of Fate is something that they would think about printing when they've already obviously set a standard of extra turn spells have to have this clause of they get exiled. If they don't, if they don't resolve, they go to the graveyard, which is fine, because then your opponent, I mean, obviously you're not getting the extra turn, the benefits of it, what have you. But that's the reason why those cards, we even had one in Dominaria, Karn's Temporal Sundering, bounce something, gave you an extra turn, but you had the restriction of having to have a legendary creature or planeswalker in play for 6 mana, and then you got to bounce something, take an extra turn, and then the card exiled itself. And then we go to the next set, and we have I'm going to call it a box topper, even though it's not right, a promo box topper for Magic 19 of a card that costs 1 more mana, that you can cast at instant speed, that shuffles itself back into your deck when it goes to the graveyard from anywhere. And part of me kind of wanted to defend Nexus of Fate in this after I saw it get banned. There's people complaining and all of that. But as someone, as I can think about things and just see what cards like Nexus of Fate has done to the format, well, it's not warping the format by any means. People aren't specifically like building their main decks to beat Nexus of Fate decks, because they have other decks they have to worry about. Like I said, in paper we have the Sultai mid-range decks, the plethora of mid-range decks, the plethora of Hadana's Climb decks, the many different flavors of control decks, and then mono red and mono white and red white and mono blue and white blue, and all these other great decks that are super powerful in best of 3 formats, and can even be powerful in best of 1 formats, that Nexus of Fate isn't really a problem here, but in best of 1 is, for all the reasons I explained, a few minutes ago, is the fact that once it gets its lock in play, you don't, essentially that's it. Like, you have a very high percentage of winning the game. There no reason to play it out. And in paper, obviously it's not a problem, because it's easier just to concede and move on. You can do it too on Arena, but obviously there's a ton of things I can get into this, but it's like it's a different video for a different day. Final thoughts on all of this. Nexus of Fate, good banning for best of 1. Hopefully, for me anyway, doesn't see a banning in best of 3 on Magic Arena and in paper. And I kind of like and don't like the difference of banning cards on Magic Arena but not online, or not in paper and things of that nature. But this is kind of what Magic's going to, as far as like the future of it. And in all honesty, if they're going to push best of 1 as much as they are, they might as well make it as much of a entertaining format. So when we get events that are Magic Online or Magic Arena only, and people want to spectate and things of that nature, to make it as easy as we can as a spectating sport for those people, and watching someone take an infinite number of turns and then just keep casting the card to not lose the game, or to make them time out or anything like that, then by all means, like, ban cards like Nexus of Fate. It's a good thing for Wizards if they're planning on pushing best of one. If not, then I think Nexus of Fate died for the sins of a format that isn't going to see more than you can either play best of one as a ranked format or a non-ranked format or anything like that. But that's going to be it. This is kind of like a discussion-y rant type of thing. Like I said, I saw this and I knew that I had to say something about it. I had to talk about it because it is just kind of a first thing, you know, Nexus of Fate being one of the first time walk effects, you know, taking extra turn effects that doesn't hit the graveyard or doesn't even exile itself when it resolves, that actually shuffles back into your deck, and being our first banning on Magic Arena in any of the formats, which again is nuts, and probably will be another video for another day. But if you guys enjoyed me ranting about this absurdly powerful Magic card and want to see more videos like this, or me talk about other cards that come out in standard, set reviews, things of that nature, even deck techs, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video or any of the videos anywhere, I don't care. Just let me know that you guys like the videos and that you want to keep seeing things like this, and be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more standard. Standard's really sweet, and even though we have again have our first banning, standard is still awesome, great format to watch. If you're not into it, get into it now. You will regret probably playing in one of the best standard formats ever. That's going to be it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video.